Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Join me today. He's a TED Talk and keynote speaker, an endurance athlete, a type 1 diabetic, and author. It's Sebastien Sasseville. How are you doing today, Sebastien?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to learn more about you and your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests, we go straight to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
So I live in Quebec City, and right now I'm from Saint-Patrice de Beau-Rivage. That's a very small town, village, about an hour away from here. So that's where I grew up. And we didn't even grow up like downtown the village. It was like out there in the forest, in the country. What I was involved with, it was just work. We lived so far away from everything else that I was not involved in sports, which might be a surprise for your guests who know a bit of my story. And I was just surrounded by farmland. And it was such an important thing to my parents that we started to work and that we did that early. And it's funny how every podcast is different, because what I'm about to say, I've never shared anywhere else. My first job, I made $3 per hour, and it's the hardest I have ever worked. I was like getting up at 5 and then biking to work, rain or shine. And it sometimes it would just be like 15 minutes of biking under pouring rain. And then you get there and you work so hard and you're literally shoveling, you know what I mean, and just getting kicked by the cows, and it's awful. And then you come and my boss is pretty greedy, and so he would like count my hours by every 15-minute increments. So if I worked 2 hours and 15 minutes, like I would literally come home with $7. It was tough, but it was not about the money. And I understood that years later. My parents just wanted us to learn how to work hard, to commit to something, to do good work. And today I'm thankful for all those experiences.
Working at that young of an age, did it help you grow like work ethic skills and understand the value of money in a way that maybe some people growing up where they're just given the money?
Totally. I look at I look at kids now, and by kids now I mean millennials, people in their 20s. Now, I started to work, I was 12, right? And now, and in a way, it's so good that they have it better. This is the whole point of life, that you make a better life for your children, right? So this is all good. That being said, like we learned so much about ethics, about I don't care. Sometimes it's going to hurt. Sometimes it's not going to be pleasant. And I'm all about, today, 30 years later, my passion is my work. So I've paid my dues, and I could not imagine a life where I don't do something I love. Right. But these early experiences, failures, tough jobs you hate, they're so critically important, because that's when you learn the most important things in life.
I totally agree with that. I think some with my generation, you kind of see people just get it easy and they don't work hard for anything. And then when they have to, they don't know how to react. And I was brought up kind of similar, where you got to work for everything. If you wanted that item, you got to work for it. You got to do chores and all of that. And now living on my own, you kind of respect that in a way. Like you said, you kind of are thankful because you know how hard it is. Do you wish that you were living in like the forest nature? Do you kind of wish that you were in the city life, or did you kind of enjoy being in that peaceful setting? I don't know if it was peaceful, but it's more nature kind of is relaxing. You kind of enjoy wildlife in a way.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that's the upbringing that I had. But at the time, you don't know. At the time, you're just happy. You don't know anything else. That's your world. So, um, I just loved the setup back then. And it's, you know, today, 30 years later, you can't really say, well, I wish I had that, or I wish I had a different, I mean, it was, everything we are, the good and the bad, is created by our environment. So I'm you know, so the qualities of your parents, their weaknesses, that that makes you, it builds you, and everything they do good, then you don't do so good, and everything you hate about them, then it becomes one of your strengths, right? So no, I'm grateful for the whole environment I grew up in, and that includes living in the country, that includes the parents um, that I had with their weaknesses and their strengths, that includes everybody that the universe presented to me along my journey. I think that's where I was lucky, to be honest. There's luck involved in life, and that's just it. And I had that, but it's important to realize it and give back.
Did you have any motivations or inspirations growing up? Someone that you looked up to or something that you looked up to?
I looked up to my grandfather a lot. Um, so my mom's dad. He was funny. He was smart. He was hardworking, and it was this kind of wise old man who took care of everybody, who supported everybody in different ways at different times. He did that for his family. He did that for, he was very involved in charities and things like that. He was good at manual work and he was a farmer, right? And he embodied that hardworking persona. And he passed several years ago when he was 94, I think. So, I mean, he was born in the early 1900s. So, yeah, I looked up to him tremendously. I know everybody in our family did.
When you took those skills and everything, now looking back, or now where you are today, do you use those same skills as you're taking care of family or you're taking care of things and trying to portray what your grandfather did?
Yeah. The short answer is yes. And obviously I looked up to my parents as well, my dad, who I've learned so much from. But today I don't have kids. I thought I'm 41. I thought I would have kids. It did not happen for me, and I don't think it will. But I have this very paternal gene in me. I bought investing in real estate and apartment buildings, and one of the first things that came to mind the first time that I bought one was my sister has kids. So I was like, all right, you know what, Genevieve, like maybe your kids, when they go to university, they can stay there, right? So taking care of my tribe, that's definitely within me.
What was that dream job that you were wanting growing up?
I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
I wanted to be an architect. And that's when I was like 7, 10 years old, when all the little boys want to be a fireman or a policeman, right?
Yeah.
And I really, really I've wanted to be an architect for at least a decade, leading up to that moment in life when you actually have to choose, graduating from high school, and you kind of have to make a career choice. And I laugh because it's funny because you're 17, which makes no sense, right? That you have to make a career choice that young. Leading up to that day, I wanted to be an architect. And when I wrote the form deciding what I was going to study and stuff, I changed my mind at the time, at that time.
I think it's the craziest thing that you have to make that life-making decision at that age, and you're like, well, whatever path you take, you got to stick to that. But then when you get to college, it's like, nope, you change it. So when you went to university, what were you going for? What was that degree?
So I started to be not an accountant, but like a technician. And I admired people who went to college, but at the time, and I think there was a bit of my grandfather in that, it felt too remote. It felt like I wanted to own a business. I wanted to build something, create something. And so I said, I'm just going to go get some accounting, financial knowledge, get out of there as quickly as possible so that I could start my business. And in 2020 or 2021, this is the cool thing to say. 10 years ago, we went through a phase where it was celebrity chefs, and now we have celebrity entrepreneurs. And I don't know what the next thing is going to be. So it's very sexy to talk about being an entrepreneur now. But 20 years ago, when the word entrepreneur did not even exist or was not used, that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to run a business. And then I realized it wasn't that simple. And I opted to go to university. I did that, studied communications, PR, which kind of, and that's what my dad did. He was a PR person. And so unconsciously, as much as I looked up as my grandfather, I mean, your father is your father, right? So I just went for something that my dad did. And today I'm a professional speaker.
So kind of the communication does help because you took those skill sets in a way. I mean, it's definitely different than architecture that you were wanting when you were growing up. Do you kind of wish that you took maybe enjoyed that college experience, or it didn't matter, you were just trying to get done quickly as possible?
Oh man, you have no idea how much I enjoyed it, how much I miss it now. Man, okay, a few weeks ago I sold my old fridge, and for cheap, so college students picked it up and they showed up totally unprepared, no straps or anything. They were just gonna put it in the car, and I'm like, first of all, you guys are idiots. And then second of all, I'm like, oh man, I miss that time in my life. Can all right, I'll make a deal. I'll give you the fridge, but bring me to a university party. So I loved it. Anybody who's thinking about college or in college right now, the degree you get at the end is irrelevant. Don't stress about it. I see so many people being stressed out about college and COVID, and it's the easiest and most fun time of your life. And if you think college is stressful, well, good luck for real life. So, and it's stressful for some, and I kind of joke right now, but because that's all you know at the time, right? But what it really is, yes, you will get a diploma, but it won't be a competitive edge because everybody's going to have it too. You learn a little more about life, the network. It's all about the network, the people you meet there, because they're all going to end up in good jobs and good companies. And that's the most precious thing about college, the network.
I think that's totally correct. I think it's the people you meet. I think that's the college experience right there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kids just stress out about tests or getting a certain GPA and stuff. And some companies look at GPAs. I know the company I'm at, though, didn't really look at it. They didn't even look at my degree. They looked at what did I do in college and my experience. And
yeah,
I think, wow, did I really go 4 years to get this paper that has nothing to do with what I'm doing? But if you put it correctly, it's the experience and the atmosphere is what's important than just tests.
Yeah, and you are learning stuff, and you are building some expertise. And I mean, if you spend 4 years studying engineering, of course, you will know a lot about that. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's important, but people companies want to hire intelligent, well-rounded humans who have emotional intelligence, social intelligence, who can perform not on a test, but in real life, who can have a conversation with a client, understand what's important to them. And then it's not about regurgitating everything you learn. It's about listening to a client, and figuring out what's important to them, and then serving them. So, yeah.
After college, a big moment happened in your life at the age in 2002. Talk about that moment.
Yes. So that's when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Chronic condition, incurable. So that's the thing, because one thing is everybody goes through tragedy or, a tough period. But when you're diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, you're told you're going to live with this for the rest of your life. And that's hard because you don't know anything about the condition at the time. You don't know if it's going to limit your life, if your dreams are possible. Because when you're 22, you have dreams, so and goals and ambitions, and now you don't even know if you'll get to try, right? So that was hard. And at the time, I was not active, not very into sports. As I said, I was a really good college student. Like, I just miss it so much. And there was that very quick turnaround. It was, all right, so I know that what I'm doing is fun. I know it's not healthy. And now there's something that's forcing me to be healthier. And I don't know if it was wisdom or just being a little slow, but I was like, it's one or the other. Like, it's either I'm really smart or really dumb. But it was like, all right, that's my new life. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't, obviously you're going to be sad and it's dark for a little while, but kind of quickly, I was like, all right, I'll be healthy instead. And that was my what happened when I was 22.
I was diagnosed when I was 11. So you're at that age where you're just trying to enjoy life, have fun and stuff. Do you think it's easier or harder for someone when you were diagnosed to be able to maybe understand it a lot more than someone like when I was diagnosed at a younger age?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I think every scenario has their pros and cons. Like, I know for a fact you're at 22, you were a lot more mature than I was. Because as a young adult, I went to camp, I spoke to kids who were your age when diagnosed, and it's beautiful to see how mature they become, most of them. And so, yeah, and you could say that I was lucky, like I could go through my teens and early 20s without it, have some experiences, and didn't have to worry about diabetes. I don't know. I think life's about becoming a better person, learning, becoming more mature, learning to serve, to be impactful, to leave a legacy that's not about you, but about the impact you had. And I have no idea what my life would be if I had not been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I'm so thankful that I was. And I know some people, whether it's patients or parents of kids with type 1 diabetes, when I say that, they just hate it, or it doesn't sit well with them. And I totally understand. I mean, obviously we wish that nobody was diagnosed. So there's things that I hate about it, but it became a vehicle for me. Like I hate that I have to test my blood sugar. I hate that I have high blood sugars and low blood sugars, and I hate that it's a pain. I hate all that, but the vehicle it became of personal growth, like when I was 22, I was just I was arrogant. I was not mature. I was partying a lot. I was yeah, nothing good. And it helped me to be humble. It helped me to help others. It helped me to take care of my body. It helped me to stop destroying my body. And yeah, so I'm thankful that it helped me a lot in life.
Before we had this talk, I found an interview where you did say why I'm glad that I was diagnosed. And to me, when I hear that, I kind of can see myself in that same way, because I don't know what my life would have been if I didn't have it, especially when I got diagnosed and I had to go through it through the teen years and the college years. And I had that time where I partied. I mean, I still enjoyed my time, but I wasn't as crazy as I could have been. So I do wonder what my life would have been. But is there a time where you've had it where it was a huge struggle? Like you kind of had those mindsets where it was negative? Because I've had those moments, but you know that this is the rest of your life. You're going to have to deal with this. But have you had those moments?
Never.
I want your life then. I want that.
I had moments where I wasn't happy that I had it. Mm-hmm. Moments of frustrations. Okay, so today I had a tough workout on the bike. I thought I'm pretty good at controlling blood sugar when I exercise. My challenges are elsewhere, but I dedicated a chunk of my life to exercise, and I'm comfortable to say it. I'm very good at managing blood sugar when I exercise. But again, I have other challenges with diabetes elsewhere. And today I had a key workout, tough workout, and I just blew it. Like my blood sugar was elevated the whole time, and I was very, very frustrated. It was toward me, toward diabetes, toward I am so committed, I'm putting so much work, effort, sacrifice, love, passion, time, energy, money. I'm pouring my life into this athletic venture work, and I'm just so frustrated. That was 6 hours ago today. So yes, there are, so to answer your question, there are moments to this day still where I hate it. I'm not happy that I have it. But overall, if you're asking me, was there ever like a 2-month period where you were depressed every single day? Because you never. And I traveled, I climbed high, I partied hard, I built businesses, I loved, I did everything with diabetes, and it's never been like like when I ran across Canada, when I was training for Everest, when I'm thinking about going elsewhere for a few months because it's snowing right now and it's COVID and we're confined and I just want to get the hell out of here and go somewhere warm for never ever it enters my mind that diabetes is a limitation now, or that I cannot do it because of diabetes. Now, that being said, am I spending a ton of hours to make sure I'm going to be fine? Absolutely. So I will travel with so much diabetes supplies. I will do researches, spend hours making sure where I'm going, I have access to care, or can I buy, if I want to buy insulin in Nicaragua, like, can I do that? Do I need a prescription? Is it that like I will pour hours and hours and hours of work into a project to make sure that I'll be fine. But it never entered my mind that it would be a limiting factor.
Talk about the path to becoming an endurance athlete. What made you want to get into that?
So it was, earlier in this conversation, I said I was lucky. So I met inspiring people. So my life was a mess before diabetes, then I was diagnosed, then I decided to be active, I decided to be healthy. And it's funny when you commit to those things, the universe responds and says, all right, if you're serious, I'm going to help. So I kept meeting inspiring people, and people that made me want to be active. And I started to run, I started to climb, I started to do all these things, and the peaks got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the runs got longer and longer and longer. And then I committed to big challenges. So I became an endurance athlete one step at a time. There was a time where I couldn't run, a mile to save my life, and that's in my early 20s. Like, I was not that kid who was good in sports. So it was just one step at a time. And then you start loving it. You start loving how you feel when you take care of the temple, and then you want to do a little bit more. And then that entrepreneur kind of mentality, I want to win, I just kicked in and helped me as an athlete. And then you just want to do a little more every day. And that's been kind of my secret recipe or strategy. You don't have to do a lot, as long as you're always in movement, and as long as you do a tiny little bit more than yesterday. And I don't care if it's 1 minute more, but as long as you're consistent with the work and improving what you do, and next thing you know, you run across countries.
So you talked about one of the challenges being climbing Mount Everest. How did you know that was a challenge that you wanted to take on?
Oh, that dates, from way before diabetes. I as a kid, because I grew up in a small town, because it was a very Catholic, very conservative upbringing, simple, humble. And I guess that was my way to not rebel, but it was like, to me, like, traveling wasn't to go to the country next to yours. It was going halfway across the world. Like, where's the furthest that I can go? That's traveling. So I love climbing in trees. I have so many, this is one of my earliest memories in life, how much I loved climbing in trees. And I did it with my friends, and then you hear about Everest, you see films and documentaries about it, and mountaineering and all that. And it just, I don't know, the people who were doing that, it looked really, really, really hard. It looked challenging. It felt like, if you can do that, there's not much you can't do. And yeah, I had a fascination for big mountains and Everest, and that's how it all started. And then in my early 20s, like, I worked on a few different projects. I wanted to ski across Greenland, things like that, and it never worked. I think I was in love with the idea, with the end point, the summit, but I didn't understand what it required. Not enough love for the process, respect for the process. Like, it was something cool, right? So I wanted to do it. And that's why all of these projects failed. And then again, because of diabetes, like, it gave purpose to what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, I'm not invincible. And I can see already a lot of people who suffer because they have this disease, they're depressed, they blah, blah. So it injected a lot of fuel and purpose, which is fuel, into my quest for doing something big. And then Everest was just what I wanted to do.
Was this an opportunity to show other diabetics that you're able to do anything that you put your mind to it, and show that we don't have limitations because of what we are going through?
Definitely, definitely. Um, the whole project was built around that. So initially, you have to want to do it for you because it's your passion, because it makes you happy, because you just want to do it. Even if nobody knows about it, if there's no sponsors, if no one is going to hear about this, you just have to want to do it for you because it makes you happy. It's that simple. And then, well, you need a few bucks, right, to put together a big project to get out there. And the whole thing was built so that it would inspire people living with type 1 diabetes. It was, if I can do that, then there's nothing a person with type 1 diabetes can't do. So it was, in a way, it was trying to lead by example, trying to inspire by example. And sometimes people ask, like, was it hard when you came back? And you know, how do you feel after a big project like that? And everything I wanted to do, like, started after that. It was because it was about the message. It was about not so much what I was doing. It was about what it meant. And that's what I was focused on when I was climbing. But when I was building a project and a sponsorship proposal 2 years prior, the climb, I was focused on what it meant and how it could inspire and transform the lives of others. And I think it gave me energy to complete, to execute, and it also made the project appealing to, you know, big businesses who decided to sponsor.
Did you have a hard time getting sponsors or being able to convey what you're wanting to accomplish, or were you getting that backing easily?
Nothing's easy. Nothing's easy, which is okay. No, it took a few years to get to a point where I had built a relationship with a company. So when I was working for that company, and it was a large, you know, Fortune 1000 company, and they were in the diabetes space. So, um, so, well, first of all, I wanted to work there because I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to help people with diabetes. So my why, like, see, this is important. My professional why was not different from my personal why. It was all connected, and that creates a very coherent and compelling and persuasive narrative. You're not faking. You're not faking it. You're just so committed to your life's work. So I remember the first day that I started in this company. I was a kid. I you know, mid-20s, and I came from the bar industry straight to a Fortune 1000 company, and I have no clue about politics at the time and what you should and shouldn't do. You know, and my first day in, I emailed, you know, the CEO, which is my boss's 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 bosses. You just can't do that, right? Or it was the president of the company, not a CEO. But I'm like, I would like, you know, one that want to climb Everest, and, you know, I'd like to talk sponsorship. This is day one. And he took the meeting, and I know it probably offended my direct supervisor at the time, but he took the meeting. I told him about what I wanted to do, and then we didn't really talk for years. But he said, when you're ready, come back and see me. So the company, they gave small sponsorship to me, and we learned to work together. We started to craft a relationship, build a relationship. My message got better, and it was like any relationship. It had to be built. And at every stage, if you do something wrong, then you're kind of opening the door for for them to say no. Yeah, it took a lot of work.
If you didn't go straight to the president, do you think it would have taken you a lot longer to eventually get that sponsorship?
I don't know. What I know about politics now, maybe it would have helped not to go to him straight. But there was no doubt in anybody's mind that this is what I wanted to do, with or without them. I looked for sponsorship elsewhere. Everybody knows that. I went to their competitors for other projects. This is what I'm doing, and I believe it's impactful, and I'm doing it. So do you want to be a part of it? And I think this is an important mindset. I get calls from people who look for sponsorships all the time. Like I did well with finding sponsorships for big projects. Like the Run Across Canada was a $500,000 project. And first of all, I did well with sponsorship because I did every possible mistake you could do. So I learned and learned and learned and learned and learned. But you just want to put yourself in a position where you're not asking, you're not begging, right? So you're going no matter what, and you have to shift the conversation from please give me money to this is happening and this is bringing some value to a lot of people. Do you want to be a part of it? Because if you don't, I know somebody else will.
It almost sounds like you're trying to put these companies in a battle with each other to who wants to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And to be 100% honest, for Everest, it did not happen because I was younger, less experienced. I did not understand the game. So it was just a company that I worked for. They knew that's what I wanted to do. We built a relationship. And when the day come, I asked for a little more and they said, yes, we're going to do it. Now, for other projects later, absolutely. I have purposely made companies felt like there was your biggest competitor is about to sign a check. So what are you going to do? Yeah, definitely.
I think the way that you mentioned where you learned from doing the sponsorships, I think it shows a lot about what, like you talked about being an entrepreneur and all that. It shows that you're willing to do anything. And I had that same moment where I was putting charity events and I thought, oh, let's try something new that's never been done on my campus. Still, it has not been done at the level that I did it at. Where I went to these companies and I said, hey, we do these charity events. I know a way that you can get involved at my school that has never been done. And I think it showed the growth and being able to put a pitch on, show numbers and stuff that when I was able to do it and raise all that money, none of the money was going to me. We were all about a charity, and it's my greatest accomplishment that I've done. One of many now as time has gone by, but this was in college that has never been done. And I still have that connection with these companies that you're like, oh no, they're going to be done with you. No, I still get calls. Hey, these people saw your ad or the shirt that you've done now, because I have 30 shirts out there with all these companies on, and it's a great way to promote, a free way, and I love it. I mean, I wish I still got into sponsorship, but you never know what can happen. But I love the sponsorship business. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. It's not easy, but I mean, I love what you're sharing, right? You just have to do something different. You have to commit to something big. You have to have some skin in the game. And then when you say something different, I mean, what they hear is, wow, like I'm going to differentiate myself and we might do better, right? So yeah, absolutely. And it takes some courage to do that as well, which also connects with our previous kind of conversation where people are stressed with college and they shouldn't. Like one test, one failed exam or project like we're talking about now is never going to define your life. And that's the problem. Like, people think that failing that exam is going to have a permanent impact on your life, which that's never happening. Like, you can screw up really bad and it's still not going to have that much of an impact on your life. It's just life, right? And you learn, everybody makes mistakes, and you just have to get back up and learn from that and commit to something even bigger. And it just, yeah, when you learn to love to fail, and it's not about loving failure like in a sadistic, way. It's just about, it's not a love for failure, it's a love for growing and learning, which involves that you remove ego from that. Very, 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 very key. That's a problem now with social media, and everybody's trying to look cool. Yeah, don't do that.
When you thought about the idea of running across Canada, why? Why did you want to do that? Was it basically a challenge, or a rise to a challenge that no one has done it before?
Others have done it before, and it's surprising. It's like, obviously Terry Fox is the most famous person who's attempted it, but no, it was, well, I personally, which is a very, very small part of it, but personally, for my little enjoyment, it just sounded like a ton of fun to run a marathon a day. And I didn't break any records, but it was just, I was excited by that. I wondered if I would finish, if I could do it. But that's a tiny part of the project. So this is after Everest. This is after a few Ironmans. This is after an ultra in the Sahara. So I had built some confidence about my ultra running capabilities. And when I speak, I say that I kind of started a lot of talking about how I sucked in sports as a kid, which is true, but it was in organized sports, which is what you do in school. What I found out later in life is that I have an abnormally low but healthy heart rate, and I can go for a very long time. So individual endurance sports were more for me. And so the challenge sounded fun, but it was all about diabetes. It was an awareness campaign. And it's really when we started to think about the logistics that it became really appealing in terms of what kind of impact we could have. We realized, wow, like, I could be in a different town every day. I could be in a different diabetes center every day. I could be talking to different media every day. I could be talking and raising awareness in a big way for about a year throughout the country, and have a really big impact. And because we're running, and I say we, it was me running, but it was it is not an individual accomplishment. Like, hundreds of people have made that project possible. But we realized, wow, it's actually possible that we could reach every single person who lives with type 1 or type 2 diabetes in Canada. Whether it was in person, through social media, mass media, events, you name it, the whole array. And that became the goal. Like, we want to reach and potentially impact 3 million people living with diabetes in Canada. That was incredibly appealing. So that's why I went for it.
So you took more of the approach where it wasn't being selfish in a way, like a personal enjoyment. You were doing it for every person out there, the 3 million people with it. And that's what you were doing it for.
Totally. That was the ultimate fuel, because it's hard and it hurts and it takes a long time. Like, think about it, like, you have to run a marathon a day, or almost, for close to 9 months. So it's going to hurt a lot for a long time, and 2 days into the whole thing, right? But to this day, sometimes I'm thinking, wow, like, how did that happen? Like, how did it work? And I didn't really get injured. Again, everything was hurting tremendously, but no big break that I would, stop me for a few months or weeks. And that was the purpose, was the fuel. Totally. And that's one of the greatest things I've learned so far. Like, that purpose is the ultimate fuel. And that's why I was doing it.
Do you know, with everything that's going on now, did you have a plan for what was next as an athlete? Did you have another country that you wanted to run across? I mean, United States would be a challenge.
Yeah, I'd love that.
States. Or did you kind of have that moment where whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, I mean, I was proud about the accomplishment. I wanted to digest and, reflect on it. And I got back to Ironman racing, which is my big focus right now. So yeah, I didn't really know, but it was the purpose never changed.
Mm-hmm.
The expression of that purpose, yeah, it's going to vary, and then sometimes you're injured, and sometimes you want to run across Canada, sometimes you're committed to Ironman racing, and who knows what it's going to be in 5 years. But the purpose is the same, and I just want it to be impactful. So, and that helps to deal with the unknown, and of course that's something that I'm doing for fun, right? So my salary doesn't depend on it. It's just, it has to remain fun.
How did you get involved in keynote speaking and doing TED Talks?
So what I did is a TEDx, which is like a baby TED Talk, just to be humble. And I started speaking by accident. In 2005, I took kids to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And so that's the highest peak in Africa. It's not a challenging peak, it's just a long walk, but it's kind of, the last few meters are pretty tough, and you're in high altitude, and not everybody summits. And it was to raise awareness, to raise money for JDRF and all that. And we raised $250,000. It was 10 kids, $20 donations average. So it was cool. We made the local media, a bunch of stuff, and then a company reached out. It was an insulin company, not to name them, and they said, and it was a local rep who said, "Hey, I've got a meeting. We've got about 250 nurses there. Do you want to come and speak about what you guys did?" And I'm like, "Of course." And then he goes, "What's your fee?" And I had no clue what he was talking about. No clue. And I'm thinking, what do you mean, what's my fee like? He's like, how much money do you want? And I just wanted to go because it was, 250 nurses. So of course I'm going. I'm joking. So I'm like, no, I want to go because I'm proud about what we did, and I want to inspire people. He's like, no, but how much money do you want? And back then I was working an hourly wage, and I'm thinking, all right, so I'm making $10 an hour right now. He wants me to speak for an hour. So I'm like, $10, but that's not what I said, right? But I just could not comprehend what he was talking about in terms of fees, right? And so I went. I think I got paid $300 for that talk, and I loved it. I loved presenting. I loved. I felt impactful, and everybody clapped, and it felt good. And then I did more and more. For years, I did it for fun. I did it as a sideline. And then at one point, I heard about speakers who were doing that for a living, and I'm like, all right, I want to do that. This is good. And it was in 2012, so a little over 8 years now that I left my day job, and I said I want to do this for a living.
I think it just shows the passion. Like, money is not a factor in that, because when you said like you didn't know how much, I'm thinking, man, he could have said any number, and it'd be so interesting to see would they accept it in a way. But it just shows that you're more focused on spreading a message, not how much can I get out of this.
Yeah. And today, so 15 years later, I mean, I do well. I'm one of the busy speakers in Canada, and my fees have gone up, and I'm proud about what I do. And it's a job, it's a business, but I always go back to, sometimes when I have a bad day, a tough client, I go back to these dozens of talks that I did for kids at diabetes camp, talking to 12 kids who are 8 years old. We're like literally, we're not at the Ritz, right? We're sitting down on the grass outside, and they're just listening to every word you're saying. And it's about making them feel like they can do anything. And it was absolute, that was pure speaking. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get any more pure than that. It was a small audience. It was not fancy, and it was 100, and it was a tough audience, right? Because you're speaking to businessmen. If you're boring, you're still going to listen, right? They might be on their phone, but it's manageable. Kids, if you're not a great speaker, I mean, they'll just like take off and roll around, and it's humbling. It's just no better school than talking to kids. So both from a content and a delivery perspective, it was the best school, and it was amazing. And I try to stay connected with that time of my life.
When you're doing these speaking opportunities, what's that main goal that you're hoping that when they leave you, they get out of it? Or maybe does it depend on who you're talking to? As you said, you talk to kids, but you talk to adults.
Yeah, I don't get to talk to kids a lot anymore, or at all, which is an absolute tragedy. And it's not entirely true. Like I do it once or twice a year, but the goal is, that's a good question. And the answer, if I'm a good speaker, the answer should be pretty obvious. No, at the end of the talk, I always close with, well, not always, but often close with two things. I say, I hope this felt good, and I hope this was useful. So the felt good part is me. I just want them to feel alive for an hour, feel like everything's possible. I want them to laugh, to cry, just to be exhausted at the end of the talk. And then the relevant part is, obviously I'm hired by a company. There's some key messages I gotta fit in there. I speak about leadership, agility, taking a first step, resilience, all of that. So there has to be some actionable content in there. But yeah, no, to me, what makes a great speaker, I guess, is if they're gonna remember and talk about it in 6 months from now. A lot of clients will tell you that if my team talks about it 6 months from now, this is going to be mission accomplished. And part of your job is also to create that shared experience, so that, again, 6 months later, people can say, when Sebastien said that, well, this is exactly what we're in right now, and let's try what he suggested.
Are you a type of speaker where you go out and find places or companies, or how do people find you to speak at?
I'm lucky because I don't have to do that anymore. Of course, I don't take anything for granted, but I did that at the beginning. You gotta sell yourself. But right now I work with an agency that represents me. I never do cold calling or emailing, or I never book a venue and sell tickets. I chose the corporate niche, so a big meeting as a national A big company has a national sales meeting, for example. They look for a speaker, so they go to a number of agencies, and hopefully my name comes up, and they look at a few speakers, and if I'm lucky, they pick me. What I will say, because that sounds easy, right? You get to a level where you just wait and you just take bookings. All of that can disappear in a heartbeat. So your job is to be, it's not to be good, like good's not good enough. Like you have to be absolutely remarkable for an hour. And then that's my biggest piece of marketing. As a business owner, I spent money on ads, on Google ads and things like that, and never any results. But when you speak and there's 1,000 people in front of you, if they go, I mean, it's 1,000 potential champions. So my time is much better spent at building an amazing talk for these people, having 1,000 champions who all go home and tell their boyfriends and their wives and friends about it. It's very simple. So 50% of my business is referrals, and then 50% is the, the good work of the tremendous, amazing agency that I work with. Long story short, good work gets rewarded. So just focus on the quality of your work, and don't worry, like things are going to happen for you.
So what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next few years, personally and professionally?
Yeah, back to the and I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, right? So because you asked personally and professionally, I really believe like for a fulfilled life, like there shouldn't be two answers here. The expression of the why professionally and personally obviously is different, but it to me it's the same thing. So I want to continue to be impactful and help people to take first steps and to believe that they can not only believe, but just take bold actions towards very bold goals and things they don't think is possible. And that is, and I've done the exercise of refining and figuring out what is my why. My why is so simple. I help people to take first steps. So I talk about leadership, I talk about a bunch of business related topics, but at the end of the day, what is it that happens after a talk? People commit. They take a first step. They start running again. They start a business. They they leave their toxic partner. They take action. That's what happens after my talk. So I just want to continue to help people do that. So professionally, it's more speaking. It's building better talks. I've taken COVID impacted business, but I at the end of the day, not much because everything went virtual. But during the pandemic, we're building a totally new keynote that will, I want to revolutionize how keynotes are delivered. So we're creating a fully immersive 360 projection kind of experience, right? It cannot be just a guy speaking at the front of the room anymore. So professionally is that, and personally, more racing and hopefully more interactions with people that I can help a little bit.
For someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Overcome obstacles. What was it?
Accomplish their goals and rise to the challenge.
Commit to hard, tough, impossible goals. The goal cannot be possible today. That's important. And you want to, my journey is not about overcoming obstacles. It's choosing obstacles. Like it's bringing obstacles in my life so that I can learn, I can grow, I can fail, I can, I can just have a rich journey. resilience is not something we have or don't have. It's built. It's like a muscle, and you're only going to build it if you put yourself in tough positions. So you. I'm not going to say dream big because it's all like fluffy, and of course dream big. I just do something. Like take one first step tomorrow that toward a goal that you're unsure about. Stop thinking about if it's going to work or not, but just indulge the experience. Like just make sure you're in a good story. Make sure you're in a challenging environment. Stop worrying about the summit, and just enjoy being on the mountain, and then really good things are going to happen.
I think that's definitely important, because if you look at all these big companies, CEOs, and people have to know that they didn't get there through the easiest route. They had to work hard. They had to challenge themselves, and they finally got there after all that hard work. So I think that's definitely important, where we all grow from the failures that we go through. I think that's the biggest thing that we can learn about ourselves.
Yeah. And it's the sexy thing, right? To talk about failure, and it's always easy to talk about it, but then when you're experiencing it, like I don't like it more than people do, right? It's not fun when you fail, and I don't want people to think that when I have a flat tire, not that it happens often, but that I look at the flat tire and I'm like, oh, thank you, God, for this growth opportunity. No, I'm going to be really pissed that day, right? But it's just, there's going to be bad days and good days, and but just challenge yourself a little bit, and in order for that to be fun, you just take the next logical step, which is always just a tiny bit bigger than yesterday. So whether it works or not, you're safe, right? And it's going to be a good experience whether or not you succeed, and that's what you want.
Well, Sebastien, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You definitely inspire so many people out there, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Me too. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. It was a very genuine, organic, non-scripted conversation. You made me feel good, so thank you, and I hope this was useful.